So, real quick, when it comes to writing and wrestling with theme, I'm looking at process and potential simultaneously, right? Constantly asking myself, like, what's the theoretical end to this path or this mode of thinking? If an idea is sprung from a place of grief, where's the lesson in that lack? If an idea is sprung from egoism, how does one suffuse order and credibility to an otherwise insular view of self? Basically, what are the situations in the real world that substantiate and ground these flashes of human emotion? At the time of writing Repeat the Drills, I was leaning into the idea of righteous indignation as a double-edged sword, that one can hold the intention of positive affectation but still harm themselves and others in pursuit of that goal. And further, that same righteousness can lead to an inflated self-perception, one which alienates oneself from the same positive affectation they cling to in order to validate their ego. It's a vicious cycle. And you see where that phrase comes from, repeat the drills. So I'm considering how, I'll show that lurch into compromised thinking, and I figured there would be a culturally specific allegory somewhere that alluded to that phenomena. So, in my search of various myths and fables and colloquialisms, I happened on the story of Indra and the ants in his palace. Okay, so long story less long. Indra belongs to a pantheon of gods from the Vedas, which is like a collection of myths, rituals, and philosophies of spirituality that was established in India around 1100 BCE, and would basically become like the prototype or like the proto-texts for what would become modern Hinduism and Buddhism, right? So Indra is, he's considered a hero in many regards, in the sense that there was a great dragon called Vitra, and this dragon essentially withheld all of the water from humanity. So all of the life that would be bestowed to civilization with water was being withheld by this great dragon, and Indra is the one that was to defeat the dragon and release the waters onto the world again. So there's a villain, right? There's a goal, there's an enemy, and Indra builds himself up and works with the other devas in order to create a plan, and he's successful. He defeats the dragon, and he wants to be rewarded for it. So he says, I want a palace. And he goes to Vishwakarma, who is the architect, and he tells him, I need the most incredible palace that truly matches the glory and heroism that I embody as king. As resistant as he may have been to that status in the beginning, because there was a sense of humility and honor that slowly turned into an inflated ego. And with that came unreasonable demands for Vishwakarma to create something that could truly satisfy him, when in reality there was nothing that could satisfy him. So Vishwakarma he's like, man, like, yeah, you may be a hero, but I'm over it at this point. So Vishwakarma goes to Brahma, and in the context of Indra not being able to be satisfied, and Vishwakarma going to Brahma and seeking counsel, essentially as the embodiment of all time and life energy throughout the known universe, Brahma's just like, all right, I got you, fam, say less. So Indra and Vishwakarma are back at it, having the same conversation about creating this perfect palace, and then a small child arrives, and Indra, he's feeling himself now. He's like, all right, we have an audience. He wants to gloat. He's it's a magnificent palace, right? Yeah, like, you see me. And the child sort of chuckles and is like, oh yes, it's certainly the best palace I've seen an Indra create yet. So Indra's like, at first he's like a little beside himself, but he's like nervous, but he's also like, nah, I'm not about to let this little nigga, like, So he's like, how many other Indras do you know? And he's leaning into it unaware. So the child very solemnly breaks it down. He's like, for him, now clearly revealed to be Brahma, he starts to explain that, like, each cycle of sleep is the universe being created and destroyed. Brahma opens his eyes and an Indra is born to defeat a monster, to defeat another Vitra. Brahma closes his eyes and that universe is no more. So with a lifespan of 4.3 million years, he's seen every Indra to date. And then he looks at the ants that are crossing the palace grounds, and he laughs. So you see where this is going. Indra is like shook at this point, and he asks, what's so funny? And Brahma sort of disappointedly answers. He's like, yo, you really want to know? Okay. These ants are all Indras. Once the smallest of creatures, they reincarnate and build themselves to become enlightened and to become diplomatic. They stand triumphant over a monster, and then suddenly they think that they're the king of the universe. And so they must repeat the process, go back to the drawing board and become an ant. So Indra caves, right? Because he's called out at that point, and he acknowledges his misgiving. He says that he will change, reminded of his place in the universe by existing in the very presence of his past selves, who are repairing their karma. And Brahma has a little laugh and considers it a mission accomplished. But back to my original point, like the very, very top of this whole conversation, that was the gem, right? Is the potential and the process coexisting. Self-righteousness and indignation as kind of the first indication that you're going too far in the wrong direction. in the sense that Indra experienced it, and we all can at times experience it. There's also the question of what happens when that's never checked. What might we end up sacrificing? Or really, how far does the regressive slope of good intention go? Just because you've accomplished something or done something that is remarkable, or even, you know, sublime to a certain extent, does that necessarily mean that you are forever entitled to live in that victory? Or does that only become, you know, the first step towards something darker? But this is where the writing becomes the insight into making that choice. Like that, the song is that moment of repeating the process and continuously asking and checking yourself at the door. So those first few bars, you know, don't let your word fall short of how you step in, because the world trusts results more than admirable intentions. That's the cautionary tale part. You know, it's almost like we've already seen where this is going, so I'm telling you now so that you're not surprised at the end. You know, and then through the midst of that, you get the transposition, and everything drops harmonically, and I get into the ego bag with the "fuck you, pay me, acknowledge where you got your styles, stay rebuking all the nonchalance and evil tricks," you know, and therein lies that sort of there's a bit of like menace and kind of interesting texture to this that is going to clearly differentiate from the beginning, when it was far more like lucid in the way that it was being processed. And you know, sort of the repetition that comes outside of saying repeat the drills is the my G already got the chop before the needle lift, and that's where thematically I feel like it reaches into like a couple of different places. There's like the literal nod to premeditated sample chopping, like while you still got the record playing. You know, then there's the idea of time displacement, which is an aspect of that, where you're experiencing two separate realities simultaneously. It's like the summation of your creative arrangement in your mind, as well as the actual recorded archive of ideas and emotions on wax or wave that you're sort of extrapolating it from in real time. So then that links right back to the Indra situation, seeing the potential of a path that could lead to any number of outcomes, but more importantly, that you'll probably find yourself doing it over and over again, because it may not be perfect the first time, or the second, or the 200th, or the 5,000th, you know. You might want to cut that off before it's too late and the song stops, so to speak. Now, obviously, that can be taken to varying degrees. It depends on how it's going to resonate with you, but I think with this song specifically, the tone is definitely of an Indra who's on the fast track to becoming an and again, because the chop can be a lot of things. We might have to get into that more a little bit later, but yeah. So that's my rant. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Go get that Kindling out now. Everything burns. Yeah.